All right, diving in today with a question. Um, can a place be too sacred to conquer?
Hmm.
We're talking Mount Kailash, that peak in the Himalayas, never been summited.
Right.
Not because it's impossible, but because it's just profoundly spiritually significant to so many.
Yeah. And it's a fascinating, even among the world's most challenging mountains, it's a unique situation. We've got excerpts from this Traveler's Guide to Mount Kailash to try to unpack all this.
Also, yeah, and this isn't just for someone who wants to climb it, right?
Right.
This is more like we're going to explore all the cultural and spiritual stuff around Mount Kailash.
Yeah, it's a journey in itself, just thinking about Mount Kailash. It's in remote western Tibet, so starkly beautiful, one of the world's 14 highest peaks, but completely untouched.
Yeah, that's what blows my mind. Everyone wants to conquer mountains, but this is like the opposite. So why? Why is that?
Well, Mount Kailash is sacred to 4 religions: Hinduism, Buddhism, Bon, and Jainism.
Wow.
And for them, it's not about getting to the top, it's about the pilgrimage around it. It's a tough trek. They call it the Kora.
Okay, so say our just listeners like, yeah, this sounds awesome. I want to experience this. What's the thing they need to know before they even start packing their bags?
Permits. They're really hard to get.
Oh, really?
And you can't even get near Mount Kailash without one.
Oh, wow. So this is not like a spur of the moment backpacking trip.
No, it's a whole other layer to the planning.
Okay, so what about budgeting then? What's the biggest mistake people make?
They underestimate the cost. I mean, this is a remote area.
Sure.
The logistics are really complex. You'll need local guides, and it all adds up. You're probably looking at least $5,000 to $8,000 for the whole thing.
Wow. Okay, that's commitment.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, the spiritual aspect is a huge draw for people, and that often starts in Kathmandu.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kathmandu is like the gateway to the Himalayas.
Yeah.
It's just pulsing with energy. You'll probably get to experience a festival like Deshane. They actually have animal sacrifices.
Whoa.
It's pretty intense. Yeah, that's not something you see every day. So does that same energy carry over to like Lhasa, Tibet? That's where the journey to Mount Kailash actually begins, right?
Lhasa has a totally different vibe. It's like the heart of Tibetan Buddhism. So the festivals there are more about spiritual contemplation. Imagine giant thangkas, those incredible Buddhist paintings, unfurled down mountainsides. It's amazing. During Sagadawa, that's the celebration of Buddha's enlightenment.
That's got to be a sight. But with all this trekking and spiritual stuff, you must work up an appetite. So what kind of culinary adventures await in Kathmandu and Lhasa?
Well, first you got to think about the gear you need for the kora, the usual cold weather stuff, down jacket, thermals, sturdy boots.
Yeah.
But here's something you might not think of: altitude sickness meds.
Oh, yeah. Good.
Those heights can really get to you.
Yeah, safety first.
Absolutely.
But back to the food. What's one dish our listener can't miss in each city?
In Kathmandu, momos, hands down. They're these little dumplings, but the variety is crazy. You can get meat, veggies, even sweet fillings.
Oh, wow.
And the chili sauce, oh man, so good, so spicy.
I do love a good dumpling. What about Lhasa?
Lhasa has their own version of momos, Tibetan momos, but the must-try is butter tea.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
Black tea, yak butter, and salt.
Interesting combo.
Yeah, it sounds strange, but it's really warming and energizing at that altitude.
I'm intrigued, but slightly afraid to try that one.
Uh-huh.
So we've got the vibe, practicalities, the food. What about the actual journey to Mount Kailash? How did that all play out?
And that's where that 16-day itinerary comes in.
Right.
We won't bore you with every single detail,
Yeah, please don't.
but there are some key stops that really capture the essence of this pilgrimage.
Yeah, hit us with the highlights.
So after Kathmandu, you'll fly to Lhasa, gotta get used to the altitude.
Right.
Then a scenic drive to Shigatse, home to the Tashi Lunpo Monastery and the world's largest gilded Maitreya Buddha statue.
Wow, kicking things off with a bang.
It's incredible. Then you'll drive to Lake Mansarovar, a sacred lake. That's where you'll catch your first glimpse of Mount Kailash.
Wow.
Pilgrims even do a parikrama around the lake, too. It's a ritual circumambulation.
So like layers of pilgrimage, each with their own meaning.
Yeah.
And then finally the kora around Mount Kailash itself.
Exactly. You'll trek from Darchen, passing these unbelievable landscapes.
I bet.
The highest point is Dolmala Pass. It's a real challenge. But the views, they say, are worth it.
Oh, I bet. And the spiritual energy must be palpable at that altitude.
Totally. You'll visit sacred sites, spin prayer wheels. You might even see a sky burial at Shiva Sal. It's profound. Nothing else like it in the world.
Wow. Back for more of the deep dive, and we're really getting into this question. Can a place be too sacred to conquer? We've kind of set the scene now. We know a bit about a pilgrimage to Mount Kailash.
Yeah.
But I keep coming back to this thing. The fact that it's never been summited, like
Yeah.
Everest,
Yeah.
it's kind of powerful in the world of climbing, right? This drive to conquer, plant a flag everywhere. But Mount Kailash, it's different.
It really challenges that idea, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Like, what's more important, getting to the top or respecting what millions believe? That this place is sacred. And I noticed the guide mentions other unconquered peaks, not just Kailash.
Oh, yeah, and they all have their own reasons. Some, like Gangkar Puensum in Bhutan, are totally off limits because of government policies.
Right, interesting.
They want to preserve their culture. Bhutan's basically said some mountains are just too sacred to climb, no matter what any climber wants.
So it's like a choice based on deep belief. Are all the unconquered mountains protected that way, like by rules?
Not always. There's Mutu Chish in Pakistan's Karakoram range. It's a beast, incredibly remote and technically hard to climb. People have tried,
Yeah.
but so far the mountain's winning.
Wow, it's like nature saying, nope, this far and no further.
Hmm.
But what about places where it's not nature or local beliefs, but politics keeping climbers away?
Oh yeah, Labushkang Daitiana, it's on that border between China and India, always disputed. Permits are almost impossible to get, way too sensitive geopolitically. It reminds us that climbing isn't just about skills, right? It's this whole web of culture, politics, even spirituality.
It adds a whole other layer to that idea of conquering something, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And I think Mount Kailash, more than any other, it shows us this idea of respect over just conquering. It's not about what we can do, but about acknowledging something bigger than us.
Yeah, it's humbling for sure. Let's shift gears a bit. Let's get into the actual pilgrimage, the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra. What's the one thing our listener needs to grasp about this journey?
It's not just the walking, the trekking part. It's about shedding that ego, surrendering to something bigger. Every step has meaning. Every hardship is like a test.
So not just another adventure to check off the list.
Right.
More about interchange.
Yeah.
What are some of those things people do, the rituals and practices that help that transformation along?
They do these prostrations, full body bows, showing humility and respect, spinning prayer wheels, sending out prayers with every turn. Some even walk the whole kora, prostrating every few steps, showing their devotion.
That's intense. Sounds demanding physically and mentally.
Oh, it is, but there's beauty in that shared struggle, with people from all walks of life, different faiths, backgrounds, but united by this desire to connect to something sacred.
Like a little microcosm of humanity, facing challenges, finding strength together. Okay, but you gotta ask, what about those pinch me moments? The highlights that stick with people after they've gone home?
Reaching Dolmala Pass, the highest point, that's definitely one. It's grueling, but the views of the Himalayas, Mount Kailash included, are supposed to be unbelievable.
Breathtaking.
And we talked about sky burials. That's pretty powerful, too.
Yeah, that must be quite an experience.
It is confronting but profound. You see that cycle of life and death, the impermanence of our bodies. It puts things in perspective.
So not just about the scenery, but about facing our own mortality, our place in the universe.
Exactly. And there's another highlight. Less about what you see, more about feeling. Garikund, a sacred lake below Dolmala Pass.
Yeah, I read about that. It's supposed to be a place of purification.
Pilgrims bathe in those icy waters, cleansing themselves symbolically. Shocking physically, but spiritually invigorating, they say.
It's becoming clear this isn't just a checklist of sites or rituals. It's about opening up to experiences that challenge you and make you grow.
Yeah, leaving behind the comfortable and embracing the unknown out there and inside yourself.
So we've covered the unconquered peaks, the rituals, the highlights of the Kora, but there's this other part, equally compelling, that inner journey it inspires.
You're talking about those personal reflections, the insights you get when you strip away distractions and really immerse yourself.
Exactly. Even if our listener never does this pilgrimage, there are universal lessons here from Mount Kailash and the people who go there. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been all over this idea of Mount Kailash, the physical journey, the spiritual side.
Right.
But now I'm thinking about the internal stuff, how this experience changes you, even if you never actually go there.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? We talked about respecting what's sacred, pushing your limits, keeping things simple. But how do those ideas play out in regular life?
That's what I'm getting at. Like, what's the takeaway for someone listening in their car on their commute? Why should they care about Mount Kailash?
I think it makes you see things differently. Mount Kailash makes us rethink what conquering even means. It's not about flags on a peak.
Right.
It's about realizing some places you gotta approach them with humility, with
I
reverence.
could question that whole human thing, wanting to dominate, to own everything. We see that everywhere, not just mountains.
Oh, totally. It's not about rejecting ambition or anything, but
Yeah.
realizing there are other ways to be fulfilled. Those pilgrims, they're not conquering, they're surrendering to Mount Kailash.
And finding a different kind of strength in that surrender. That whole idea of pilgrimage, it fits in here too, right?
Yeah.
It's not just about the physical trip.
No, it's setting an intention, committing to a path that helps you grow. Could be a literal trek to a sacred place, could be a journey you take within yourself.
So what's your Mount Kailash?
Yeah.
What are you wrestling with? What's that inner peak you're trying to reach? That's the question this whole thing makes me think about.
Powerful question. Another thing I keep thinking about, especially now when everyone's online all the time,
Yeah.
it's about disconnecting to reconnect. Those pilgrims, they're out there for days, no phones, no internet, just nature and their thoughts.
Sounds scary to me.
Yeah.
Always got to be checking email, scrolling.
Uh-huh. I get it. But there's something appealing about that forced digital detox.
There is, like, you're present, you notice the little things, the world around you, your own breath. It's a reminder we don't always got to be on. Quiet and stillness are good too.
And there's a sense of community in that, right?
Yeah.
Even if they don't speak the same language, those pilgrims are going through something intense together.
Yeah, that's what stood out to me too. People helping each other, sharing, encouraging. Like, despite our differences, we're all connected.
It is. It's a reminder of that. We're all part of something bigger.
Kind of hopeful, right?
Yeah.
Especially when things feel so divided in the world.
Yeah.
So wrapping this up, if there's one thing our listener takes from this whole Mount Kailash deep dive, what would it be?
I'd say challenge how you think about conquering, achieving, being fulfilled. Embrace that idea of intention, of choosing a path that makes you grow, even if it's uncomfortable. And sometimes the most meaningful journeys are the ones that take us inwards.
Well said. We've covered a lot. From permits and what to pack to some pretty deep stuff.
Hopefully we spark some curiosity too.
For sure. So until our next deep dive, keep exploring, keep questioning, and maybe think about what your Mount Kailash might be.